Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Wednesday, May 27th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. The pause in sports action has provided opportunities for reflection, and we've been doing that at the Star this week by presenting rankings. In last Sunday's sports section, you read Sam Mellinger's list of the top 50 influencers in Kansas City sports. In a way, it worked backwards. Sam looked at what Kansas City sports are today and identified those who made it what it is. He worked really hard on this, and I thought it turned out great. You might not agree with his picks, but that's how these things work, and I can assure you the list was put together with plenty of thought and difficulty. The next such project is occurring now. The Star's identifying the top 25 plays from teams in our region. Chiefs, Royals, colleges, Sporting KC, others. Plenty of representation here. It's the brainchild of Pete Grathoff, who authors the 4 Pete's Sake columns in the Star. Others pitched in. The list has been unveiled in segments of 5, and the first 15 plays or moments have been identified. We've got 10 to go. Sam, Pete, Vahe, Gregorian, and I talked about the challenges of putting together these lists and why now is the best time in the history of Kansas City sports to work on these types of projects. So here we go with the gang. Sam, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Vahe, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Blair. Same to you and yours.
Pete Grathoff, as I live and breathe, in the room with us for the first time. First time, Pete. How you doing?
I saved the best for last, although maybe not the last. But glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here, Pete. Pete is the author of "For Pete's Sake" column that's written about 7 times a day. Some people write once, 2-3 times a week. Pete writes that before breakfast. So that's how you know Pete Grathoff. So anyway, Pete is here and Sam is here. We're all here to talk about a couple of stories that the Star has produced here. I guess past tense for one and present tense for another, because we're continuing to produce one. But Sam, in Sunday's Star, and it was posted last week, came up with the 50 most influential people in Kansas City sports. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And then Pete and Sam and I, with advisement from our buddy Vahe, are putting together the top 25 plays in Kansas City sports history. So these are two, historical, argumentative, fun type of stories. What makes now the time to do these stories?
Well, the Star has done, the people in this room have done lists of the most influential in Kansas City history before. But they've been sort of at the moment. They've been about like who's the most influential today. And we've seen lists of who's the most influential all time. To me, everything's paused, hopefully coming back soon. But right now everything's paused. And it made for a good time to try to combine the two, to try to combine history and the moment. And I've never really seen a list done like that. It probably has, and I just haven't seen it. But it was the more, to me, interesting way to do it with, sort of the times we're in right now.
Well, I think you said we are in a pause, right? So we're looking for content.
Yes, we are.
We probably wouldn't be doing stories like this if the Royals were playing.
Right.
Sporting season was up and going or returned, but that's not the case. We're in a pause, so I think it's actually the perfect time in the history of Kansas City sports. If you're ever going to write something like this, now is the time to do it.
You know what it makes me think of a little bit? Like if we need the content and it's, open up our imaginations, hopefully, to do some things like that. But it's also one of those things where I think this is true. If you're listening to a song being played, it's really hard to think about other songs. So if stuff was going on in this moment, I don't think it's as maybe pure a process. I mean, right? We really are stopped. You really are looking at just that.
Yeah. And it was, maybe allows for a little bit of breathing room to, there's people on that list like Lamar Hunt's going to be tough to top, right? Like this list is done in 100 years. Like he's probably going to be number one. I mean, there's certain like historical figures like that, and then there's other people. Tyrann Mathieu's on the list. if this list is done in 5 years, is he on it? Probably not, if he's playing somewhere else. But it's just that, to me, the challenge, and it made it way too hard. I didn't really think it through fully. But that was kind of the hardest part, is just sort of trying to balance. But I guess to Vahe, to your point, it is the time to do it, because there's not noise. You're not swayed by, not that you'd be swayed by Whit Merrifield going 3 for 4 last night, and
right.
Sal Perez just injures his knee or whatever. It is a good time to do it.
Did you find? I was thinking about this, as it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work on each person, but I also sort of thought that maybe your hardest work had to be how you wrote the setup.
Yeah. I mean, the setup, the actual, you guys can probably relate to this, the actual, writing of that setup, of the top of the thing, probably took 10 minutes. But the thinking about it took literally 2 months. I mean, I started thinking about this, not immediately after things got canceled, but within the first couple weeks of everything getting canceled. It was just, a different way to look at things, think about things.
Well, you said earlier that you didn't. It's not a historical scoreboard of
right.
Kansas City sports, because if it was, people like Jack Stedman might have found
sure.
a way on there. Walter Byers is another
Yep.
one that we've heard from.
Yep, there's a few for
there
sure.
There are others who is historically significant in the history of building sports in Kansas City, but you can make a case that as sports are defined today in Kansas City, those that's where there's a little separation, I think, from people of past generations.
Yeah, you mentioned a few, but Dan Devine, Larry Brown. I mean, there's a few others that probably would have made the list if it was just about history. And the one, if it was just about history, Patrick Mahomes might be on it. I don't know, but he sure as hell wouldn't be 3. But when I was thinking about it, and maybe that's too high. I'll listen to that argument and respect it. But to me, I think this is true. Even, Tom Watson in 83 or George Brett in 85 or Lynn Dawson in 69 or whatever, in part because of how big just the scale and popularity of the NFL, I don't think that any Kansas City athlete has ever had the influence that Patrick Mahomes has right now, when he's played 2 seasons and one was the MVP and the other was a Super Bowl MVP. I don't think that that's ever happened.
No, it hasn't. I mean, it really hasn't. I mean, George Brett he was the MVP in 80 and had the incredible year in 79, so maybe that's the closest. Great year in 79, MVP in 80. That may have been the closest anybody's come to the 2 years that Mahomes has had. And if you did this in 81, George Brett would
totally, yeah. And with George too, there's an argument that at various times he was the best player in baseball, but I think also about the scope of, just baseball in 1980. In some ways was maybe bigger. I don't know. It's hard to judge these things, but just the NFL is just such a monster. I mean, it's just so enormous that being the most popular, influential player in that league, I think carries a lot of weight.
And you said this too, but I mean, with the considering the proliferation of social media and the saturation coverage and everything, I mean, as much as I felt George Brett's presence in 1980 in Philadelphia, or Blair, you're probably in Carolina, Pete, you in Iowa. I don't know where you were in 1980. Where were you?
Outside of Chicago.
Outside of Chicago. But wherever we were, you felt George Brett's presence, but not like this. Not like you were Patrick Mahomes today, from all the different ways you would
to speak to what you just said, though, Sam, I'm just reminded that, where baseball was then to where the NFL is now. NFL has been enormously popular throughout all of our lifetimes, right? But baseball, in 1980, the Royals and the Phillies played in the World Series, and I think Game 6 is the highest-rated World Series in television in baseball history. Yeah. It's almost more than half the country or so. It was a ridiculous number, right? A number that proves to me that that's how important baseball was, and how many limited options we had for entertainment, right?
Sure.
But it just spoke to the enormity of the popularity of baseball. And Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs just won a Super Bowl. It was the 10th highest rated Super Bowl of all time, 100 million viewers. And meanwhile, baseball television ratings are, it's ridiculously low. Yeah. By comparison. So anyway, that's just to sort of address that. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and I thought this was great, that you worked hard, I know you did, to include high school figures, high school coaches. That had to be a challenge too.
That was the second hardest thing about the list because, I ended up having 4. Evelyn Gates, Jack Bush, Bud Lathrop, and Tony Severino. And, those names, like, I kind of thought of them as sort of, in some ways, representative of others. There's Walt Schubum, there's, Terry English, there's Ann Fritz. I mean, I could have put 10 in there and the list would not have suffered. I think the list would have been, just as worthy. I could also see somebody putting in a list like this and saying 0 just because of the scale of high school sports. But to me, like, I was swayed by this. And I know there were some people that were, I'm on a tangent right now, sorry, but, wondering about, there's no broadcasters on there unless you count Lynn Dawson. And to me, I was swayed by the point that a broadcaster's influence goes only so far as the team allows. I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's just how I looked at it. If I looked at it differently, then, Bill Grigsby, Denny Matt, there'd be others. But with the high school people, I was swayed by the argument in my head that there's nobody that directly touches more Kansas Cityans through sports than these high school coaches. And if you think about somebody like Tony Severino that did it for damn near 50 years, and, a lot of times he'll have a freshman football class of 40 kids or 50 kids or whatever. You start adding that up, you do that math. I mean, this is a lot of kids that, and he also opened himself up to be, a mentor to other high school coaches. You talk to high school football coaches all around the city, and it doesn't take that long for his name to come up. Jack Bush, similar. Evelyn Gates was just an absolute, like, power in advocating and pushing for girls sports around town. So, they all have, like, very strong cases, but I got an email from a woman who's very passionate, had a daughter that played for Terry English at Bishop Miege girls high school basketball. I think won a state championship, probably. Terry won a lot of them. Was actually a Scholar Athlete of the Year from the Star. And I wrote her back and I was just like, I love Terry. I remember covering Terry when I was doing high school sports. And he could have easily been subbed in for Evelyn Gates or for, Bud Lathrop or whatever. It's just, again, that was the second hardest part about that list. I didn't know what to do with high school people. I'm comfortable with how it turned out, though, on that part.
How about reaction? So it's been a few days.
You know what I've been surprised about? That sounds weird that I've been surprised by this. But, like, people have been pretty pleasant. Almost without exception. There's probably, a few that are like, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever. A couple that are like a little bit patronizing, like, oh, young son, like you don't know about, certain, H.O. Bartle, for instance, who probably at the list was 51. Bartle probably would have been the name that would have been added. I kind of took him off at the last second to put Joe McGuff in. I don't know. But for the most part, people are like, you know what? I enjoyed it. I think you messed up here. I would have done this differently, but cool, good for you. I've appreciated that. That's been nice.
And that was the spirit of the story anyway, right?
Yep.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that was the general reaction. I thought it was ridiculous, but clearly several omissions. But we'll take that up personally later. We won't. No, it was a great list. It was a great read, fun read. And we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we will move on to the current project list that Pete Grathoff and Sam and I are doing. So we'll be right back. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Back with Sam Mellinger, Vahe Gregorian, and Pete Grathoff, and only a day after Sam's top 50 most influential people in Kansas City sports history appeared in the Star. The Star started a series of stories that are the the top 25 plays in Kansas City sports history. Pete Grathoff, it was your idea to do this. It was a great idea that I barged in on as soon as I heard about it. I said, nope, you're not doing that by yourself, Pete. I want some of this. But anyway, what got you thinking about doing this?
I think it was the 10th time I was writing about the Wasp play from the Super Bowl. It's just so hugely popular. I don't think you can really quantify how popular that play is in Kansas City right now. And I just got me thinking, like, what other big plays were there in Kansas City sports history? And I rattled off like 8 or 9 in my head, and I thought, well, I can make a list out of this. And then after I brought it up to our bosses, I realized, ooh, this might be a little more difficult than I thought. And I asked Blair to help me do this. So again, I just thought it was just kind of interesting. I don't remember it being written before.
Not plays. I don't remember plays.
Not plays.
People. And we haven't done games either, which is food for thought.
Haven't done teams. Haven't done condiments.
Hang on a sec. You guys are going a little too fast. I want to keep up with this. Get these down.
All right. So when sort of it went from imagination to story, we kind of built up some criteria for it too, and I'll start off by saying one of the things that we nothing was eliminated, but I think we just gave higher priority to just actual unanticipated moments in Kansas City sports history, and not, for lack of a better word, milestone moments in Kansas City sports history. Because one of the things I thought of immediately was George Brett's 3,000th hit, and that happened in the early 90s, and I was here at the Star at the time, and I just remember it was such a big deal. But you knew it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. There was we just counted down the days. It was couldn't wait for it to happen. Ended up happening in California, and it was like 4th or 5th at bat at midnight or something. But we had a special section on it the next day, and but I agreed with that idea that milestones. Mahomes' 50th touchdown pass was incredible, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of knew that he'd already shattered Len Dawson's record, and so we stayed away from that. But do you agree that that's sort of the idea here of a touchdown, a home run, a shot, a game-winning shot? I think all of those have been covered, by the way, in the first couple of installments that we have. We're not going to give you the top 5, or I guess top 10, based on when we're recording this. But you can probably guess what they are. Maybe the order might surprise some of you guys. But so do you think we had the spirit of it right, Pete?
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you that George Brett's game in the American League Championship Series, he pulled him out of the fire. Really, that was a huge game, right?
Against the Blue Jays
in '85, yeah. But that's not a moment. A moment I'm thinking Kansas City's version of where were you when Gibson hit the home run against the A's. And so coming up with 25 of those wasn't a problem, as it turned out. We also got input from all of the beat writers at the Kansas City Star here. So I think the list is good and well represented, and honestly, we had to cut some hard ones when we got down to it.
Yeah,
I thought one thing that was interesting to me, and this is just proof that we did it exactly right? But like we independently, you sent out, I don't know how many, it was more than 25, these plays, add more or whatever. And I remember writing back, like thinking through it and writing back to you, and was like, look, I don't know if this is how you intended it or not, but to me, like I try to prioritize plays that meant something in the postseason, mm-hmm. and then also like you remember that, like and that to me, there's an intersection of the play you brought up with Wasp. That was a play that was just gorgeous, like aesthetically. It meant a ton in the biggest game in the world, and was just like one of those highlights that if that play happened in week 4. You'd be like, that was a hell of a play. I remember that one, which he's done that play like probably in week 4, both years.
Oh, he said better plays.
Yeah. But it's just, I think it's, you're right. Like the milestones are great or whatever. Like you said, like we knew that Brett didn't know he was going to get picked off right afterwards, but didn't know that he was going to get the hit. But it was just, and there are, sometimes I think of, Kansas City is just this small little, it's got 2 teams that have been around for 50 years and sporting, whatever, not going to be that much, as opposed to if we did this in Chicago or Dallas or whatever. But there were some damn good plays. That list is loaded.
the list is cool, and I'm just taking a refresher peek back at some of this, but I also want to compliment the understatedness of who wrote this specific subheadline. George Brett learns of a rule about pine tar on a bat. That's number 22. I imagine it was one of the two fellows here in the room.
So that was Pete. So that's a good example of a moment that wasn't part of a championship, and and didn't win or lose the game in that moment. Right, the outcome wasn't decided. But there's that, and there's a couple others on this list, and that sort of not rise above, but compete with some of the great plays that have produced results. Right, that play didn't produce a result, but this was my most difficult issue with the biggest problem I had was, you take that, and another one that will be out by the time that this podcast airs, Bo Jackson's throw, from Seattle. It was in Seattle. Okay. It was unbelievable. That's right. I don't recall that play changing the outcome of the game, but it was an incredible, almost inhuman play that gets repeated ad nauseum, right? So we did have room for moments like that as well.
And we didn't pick that because it did have an outcome, but that actually was the bottom of the 10th inning.
Yeah, it would have been the winning
in
run.
Seattle. It would have been the winning run, and the Royals ended up winning in, I think, the 13th inning. So, but to your point, that's right. It was again, who would have remembered that game if Reynolds would have scored?
Yeah, it was a regular season game.
Yeah, and nobody would have remembered it, but they're still talking about that throw. MLB.com ranked the top, not in order, but just 10 great throws in MLB history, and of course that was on there.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Wasp had produced a field goal and not the go-ahead touchdown,
that's right.
It would not be as high on the list as you will see it being as we release them in groups of 5. You haven't seen it yet, but it's on the list. So are obviously a lot of Royals, a lot of Chiefs. I don't know if we had some recency bias here, but a lot of Chiefs of late and a lot of Royals 14-15. But really, when you think about the Chiefs' success and the Royals' peaks of success, periods of great success before the Royals in 14-15 and the Chiefs under Mahomes, they're not loaded with great plays and moments. There are some, and they're on the list, but I think or has media changed so much in the social media world and seeing clips on YouTube, and has that changed the way we look at what a great play or a great moment is? I don't know.
Is it I'll just say real quick, is it a little bit of all of this probably? I mean, when you say that, just recency bias jumps out to me. It's like, well, recently it's been a lot better than about 30 years worth.
Yeah, you make it, the Royals were great for 10 years, right? And that 10-year period is represented on this list, but not to the extent that the 14 and 15 period is on this list.
Yeah, and look, like maybe if just speaking for myself, if I had lived 1985 the way that I lived 2015, maybe I would have come up with a couple more. Maybe one of those plays from the George Brett game, against the Blue Jays that we mentioned earlier would be in there. 1969 the way 2019 maybe. I don't know, but I think that like Mahomes he's not just the best player in the league, but he's the most exciting. I mean, he's the most likely to just make you drop your jaw and be like, oh my God, like how did the hell did this just happen in the 2015 team, 14 as well. But both those years, those games were loaded, these wild comebacks, the wild card game. It was loaded with that. They didn't have a lot of routine 6-2 wins, when they scored 4 in the second and then just, squeeze it out. Like, that did not happen. So those things are loaded with awesome plays.
And like you mentioned with your ranking of the top most influential people, who knows in 10 years what it's going to look like? Will some of these plays fade away and I'm sure we would hope get replaced by others, but maybe there is a little recency bias in there, but...
Well, I hope I'm not interrupting, but like if I'm just looking at, I won't say it out loud, but I'm looking at the top 5, and I think what you want in a list like this is for the top 3, 5, whatever, to be pretty damn hard to beat. You know, like in 10 years, if there's something else that's in this top 5, and there probably will be, right? But it's going to have to be a damn good play. You know what I mean? It's going to have to be one that people are talking about 10 years, you know, what would that be, 20 years from now? You know what I'm trying to say?
I look at the top 5, because I'm looking at it too, and then I'm thinking, well, maybe you should make that top 6 or 7. Gosh, 7. No, 8. Look at 8. Oh, my God.
Number 9 is close to many people's hearts.
Oh my gosh! I think I love number 9 was really a defining moment. For
Sure was.
Let's put it that way. And 10, oh my God! Look at 10. I mean, and that's better than 11. So
right.
I don't know. It was a fun list. We had a ball doing it. I really did, and we actually came up with another dozen or so that could have been on the list that are outside of the 3,000 hit sort of thing. They were just great, memorable plays.
That's right.
And we just couldn't find, we didn't stretch ours out to 50.
Yeah, you guys made some hard decisions.
So I tell you what, though, I do like the great games idea here. There are some.
Oh, yeah, we can stretch this thing out.
We're still wearing masks.
Yeah, you're onto something here. This is good weekly sports meeting right here.
And our buddy Mike Vaccaro, who's the sports columnist in New York for the Post, every once in a while he'll drop the top 10 managers in New York sports history or something like that, or a top 10 moment in New York. He does those things, and I was thinking, I wonder. It's boundless the number of list stories that can be done. That we really need live sports people.
Yes, we do.
It might be boundless,
but not the reader's patience. What you're saying. Okay, well let's. No, I think we teased the top 5 or 10 well enough. The top 5, by the way, will be represented by 2 Chiefs, 2 Royals, and a college moment. And if we stretch that out to the top 10, we'll include a couple more Royals and another college moment, and a sport that is not a team sport. There's your tease for you. Not a team sport. So
it's not racquetball. We'll give you that much.
It deserves to be that. Okay. Hey, Pete Grathoff, it was great having you at the round table.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again soon. And Vahe and Sam, it's always good talking to you guys.
Thanks,
Amen.
Blair.
That will do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. A tip of the cap to Sam Mellinger, Vahe Gregorian, and Pete Grathoff. It was great having Pete on the show for the first time. He was long overdue for an appearance. Links to Sam's top 50 list and the first 3 segments of the top 25 plays in Kansas City sports history are in the show notes. Hey, earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands. It's a good one. $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes the Sports Extra with the e-edition. There's an additional 21 pages of national sports coverage today. Here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, and the details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. Whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow.